James, is that then the strategy for Donald Trump in terms of the politics, to make everything about this witch hunt as he sees it? I mean, look, you and I both know Donald Trump is unlikely to be stepping into the spotlight with his arms outstretched, waiting for the manacles. But can he genuinely fight a general election, a presidential election, I should say? Can he genuinely fight a presidential election on that basis and bring the country with him? He's got the base, but he needs more than that, going by what happened the last time out.
In terms of strategy, delay is at the heart of it. If you can delay things, get to the next election and see what happens there, then yes, he will want that. And we have seen that in terms of how his defence is shaping up. Co-accused turning up without the relevant lawyers. To that case in Mar-a-Lago, that builds in a delay. There are difficulties in terms of documents, who can see the classified documents. So, there has been delay in the legal process, which has shunted court cases further into the future. And, that will be part of the game plan. Delay, delay, delay. But in terms of shaping the political context for it all, Neil, we see it. We see it on every post on his Truth Social. We saw it yesterday when the first we heard of this indictment was from Donald Trump himself, talking about deranged Jack Smith is about to make a statement, trying to shape the narrative that he has constructed around his legal difficulties, essentially portraying himself as a victim of a weaponized justice system and a target of political opponents. And that mantra has worked for him. We've seen that. Every time he's been indicted, he's enjoyed a spike in the opinion polls, a spike in support. He's also enjoyed a spike in fundraising. So it does work for him. That message does resonate with, yes, the Trump base. The difficulty he's going to have, of course, is the people in the middle ground who deserted him in 2020, who he needs to rein back in. But one imagines they are hardly going to be encouraged or drawn back towards Trump by a man 3 times indicted and potentially indicted for a 4th time. Because bear in mind that these criminal trials that will punctuate his presidential campaign will lay bare the crimes. There will be hair-raising evidence to be heard. We know that from the various indictments. A man who portrays himself as a president of the past and a president of the future. But some of the stories that will weigh on him throughout court proceedings will be no recommendation for the kind of numbers he needs for victory in November 2024.
I suppose then that leads us to question how the Democrats play this particular phase of the Donald Trump story. And the reason I say that is I think back to the run-up to the 2016 presidential election. Everyone on the Democrat side firmly believed Hillary Clinton had it in the bag. Donald Trump supporters were being pilloried on Saturday Night Live and every other evening talk show that there was. There was this real negative campaigning, in fact, and almost triumphalism from the Democrats. I'm just wondering whether or not if they return to that playbook now, whether we might see a pretty shocking result come 2024.
The Democrats have a difficulty, and that is support for Donald Trump, a support that does increase, that does enjoy a spike, despite indictments, court proceedings, and so on. Up until now, on a number of fronts, not just the legal stuff, they've been content to sit back and essentially give Donald Trump a free run. They reckon that Donald Trump, his behaviour, his interaction with the public in general, that feeds into their political narrative of a choice of stability with Democrats against a choice of chaos with Republicans. And that can only be compounded, one imagines, by a number of criminal trials over many weeks and months at which evidence of criminal wrongdoing will be laid bare. And the Democrat view would be, in terms of the wider vote and come election day, the American public at large will be switched off by evidence of a president who tried to steal an election, who tried to subvert the will of the American people, deprive them of their right to vote. So that's the strategy. They're sitting tight on that and have done for some time, but there will come the point, and they will be monitoring the opinion polls. They will see where the support lies and how Donald Trump and his behaviour, his circumstances affect the support. They will be looking at that, and if the numbers are not adding up for them, then Democrats will have to engage with Donald Trump on a more active basis, engage with his situation, and one imagines that will turn negative, but essentially press home the advantage, press home that strategy as a stiff reminder to the electorate at large. You have a stable choice with us, and you have a choice with Donald Trump of an individual who tried to steal your election last time. Don't let him do it again.
I suppose, though, Jimmy, given the man himself, given the charges that are being placed against him, the evidence that the DOJ and others are gathering must be pretty damning. So I just wonder when the earliest might be that these cases begin and we actually get sight of it. I mean, I suppose you do have that 45-page indictment, which itself makes for some pretty colourful reading.
Yeah, in terms of the timetable, we're looking at next March, next May, but there are difficulties in terms of the whole scheduling, legal challenges and so on. Take that classified documents case in Mar-a-Lago. There's a difficulty there with people who can have access to the classified material, so difficulty around hiring the appropriate lawyers and so on. And Donald Trump, he will be all about the delay, trying to knock it beyond the next election. But there's a lot that can happen between now and then, of course, not necessarily in a courtroom with Donald Trump in the dock. I mean, that indictment that's just come out, for example, 6 co-conspirators. You can bet if prosecutors have not already been speaking to them, trying to milk evidence from them about the man at the centre of the charges, then they will be now and will be in future using that hovering threat of themselves being charged to say, look, if you don't tell us what we need to know about the defendant-in-chief, then we'll lay charges against you. We'll come after you. I think that applies to this indictment. It applies to the others as well. And Jack Smith himself said, my investigations continue on this January the 6th indictment. So there could well be other people in the frame, other people whose self-interest is better served by dropping Donald Trump in it than sitting tight and letting legal proceedings go ahead as they are at the moment. So there is much going on out with the actual trial dates, but it's a difficulty, squeezing 3, possibly 4 trials into a 15-month period before the next election. That's not going to be easy, just from a practical point of view in terms of court time, legal time, finding the appropriate personnel, and so on.
And of course, we shouldn't forget, given that we are discussing this as a presidential race as well as a number of legal challenges for Donald Trump, Joe Biden isn't exactly held in the highest regard at the moment. I mean, the latest story to emerge from the United States over the past 24 hours, in addition to this, is the Fitch rating agency downgrading the United States credit rating from AAA. I mean, that is going to have a negative effect on Joe Biden, his reputation, and of course the stories that continue to circulate about a man of his years and his ability to lead the country.
Yeah, Joe Biden is far short of the ideal candidate for the Democrat Party. He's right now at this time because of the context. He's the man who brought stability to American politics after a period of chaos. He is the man who is promising continued stability. Let me finish the job in the face of looming chaos with the current alternative, which appears to be the return of Trump. But, there are many within the Democrat Party, of course, who are not happy with Biden. They're prepared to live with him for now, largely because of the lack of a nailed-on winning alternative. But the difficulties remain, and that's reflected in the opinion polls. A New York Times poll had him neck and neck with Donald Trump. They're both unpopular men, so he's far short of being the ideal candidate. And of course, you look at his age, you look at Joe Biden every time you see him, and in a place where the performance of politics is very important, he's not a man who brings performance to the national political stage. And, he talks about what he's done for the country, how he's delivered on policy, and he has. And, he's done well relatively with the numbers that he's got in Congress. But when credit ratings and so on start to go south, then that's when his record comes under close scrutiny, and by association, the suitability of the man himself to lead the country. And the more Trump bangs the drum and the more he rallies support, then the more Democrats, have to ponder, do we have the right man after all?
James, Scotsman to Scotsman, just for a second. Does this make any sense to you whatsoever? Because I will concede that I am struggling with this. And the reason I mention it is because today, back in the motherland, back in your old patch, Margaret Ferrier, the SNP MP, she has announced she won't be standing again in the by-election. That has been triggered because she was suspended from the House of Commons because she got on a train with COVID when she wasn't supposed to. Compare and contrast where you are on the other side of the Atlantic. Let me grab my sheet. And you've got a guy running for US president who could well be the next president who's charged with, conspiracy to defraud the United States. It's bonkers.
Yeah, it's eye-watering stuff. Although, Neil, Scotsman to Scotsman, let's not forget the political division that we have in the motherland that's grown in recent years. But anyway, you're asking me about this place, and yeah, bonkers would be the word. And, see, when you're living in it, and it's every day, it's on your telly, it's in your radio, it's on your newspapers, it's in detail, it kind of overtakes you and it becomes normal, almost acceptable. Just the business, the craziness of politics, division, extremism, hatred. That's the political landscape here now. And you do have to take a step back, come up for air. And when you do, and you look at the landscape at large, it is crazy. And I suppose it's at moments like this that we are reminded of where American politics has got to. When you read the indictment, and there it is in black and white, talk of an intense atmosphere of anger and mistrust. That's what Donald Trump is being accused of creating by spreading lies. Talk about eroding public faith in the election system. Talk about fake electors. Just it's like a gang of crooks, not very sophisticated crooks, just trying to steal an election, prevent the people from having their say. You look at that in black and white and you think, it's crazy. It's bonkers. It's a reminder of how far this country's come, and it's not been a journey that's taken them necessarily that far forward. I mean, at the heart of it, of course, is Donald Trump. And I think with Donald Trump, who I first encountered as a businessman when he came to Scotland, bought golf courses. And then that turned quite ugly very quickly. Started trying to evict neighbours. He was very much the big I am, and operated on a transactional basis. He wanted profit. It was all about the bottom line. It was all about him, and hang the consequences for those around him. I think he's taken the principles of the business world, his business world, into his political world, and I think we have seen casualties in its wake, the political culture, chief amongst those casualties in this country.